The hum of the engine beneath me was my favorite lullaby as I embarked on a solo road trip, a chance to escape the chaos of everyday life. The open road stretched ahead, an endless ribbon of asphalt promising adventure and freedom. Little did I know that this journey would soon become a nightmare that would forever haunt my memory. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon as I cruised down a deserted highway, my trusty old car eating up the miles. The radio played an eclectic mix of songs, and I couldn't help but sing along, my voice echoing through the empty cabin. Life felt perfect in that moment, the worries of work and responsibilities fading away with each passing mile marker. As darkness descended, I knew it was time to find a place to rest for the night. I pulled off the highway into a seemingly abandoned town. The streets were eerily empty, with only a flickering streetlight casting long, unsettling shadows. It was as if the town had been frozen in time, a relic of the past. I spotted a motel, its neon sign advertising vacancy in fading letters. It looked like something out of a vintage postcard, with a charm that was hard to resist. I parked my car and entered the dimly lit lobby. A tired-looking clerk with deep bags under his eyes greeted me. He handed me an old-fashioned room key and mumbled something about how I was the only guest that night. My room was straight out of a bygone era, complete with retro wallpaper and a rotary phone. Despite its outdated appearance, it felt strangely cozy. Exhausted from hours of driving, I collapsed onto the creaky bed and drifted into a deep sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by a loud crash outside my window. My heart pounded as I stumbled to the window, peering out into the darkness. To my horror, I saw my car, my beloved companion on this journey, mangled and flipped over in the parking lot. Panic set in as I rushed downstairs to confront the clerk. I found him standing behind the counter, his face ashen. He explained that a fierce storm had blown through, causing the car to skid and flip. Miraculously, no one was hurt, but the car was a total loss. He offered to call for help, but the nearest tow truck was hours away. With a heavy heart, I agreed to wait for the tow truck in my room. The hours dragged on, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this place. The motel seemed to creak and groan with a life of its own, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I lay in bed, my mind began to race. How had the storm been so fierce when I hadn't even heard it from inside? Why was I the only guest in this eerie town? Doubts gnawed at me like a relentless predator, and I knew I had to get out of there. As I lay in bed, my mind began to race. How had the storm been so fierce when I hadn't even heard it from inside? Why was I the only guest in this eerie town? Doubts gnawed at me like a relentless predator, and I knew I had to get out of there. I decided to leave the motel and find shelter elsewhere while I waited for the tow truck. As I stepped out into the night, the air felt heavy and suffocating. The town, once quaint and charming, now felt like a sinister maze, its streets twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. I wandered through the deserted streets, my heart pounding in my chest. The flickering streetlights cast eerie, elongated shadows that danced around me. My footsteps echoed loudly in the silence, and every creak and groan of the old buildings sent shivers down my spine. I stumbled upon an old diner, its neon sign still buzzing with faint life. Desperation drove me inside, where I found a lone cook wiping down the counter. He looked up with a weary smile and offered me a cup of coffee. As I sat at the counter, sipping the bitter brew, I couldn't help but spill out my bizarre experience to the cook. He listened intently, his eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and concern. "You're not the first traveler to find themselves trapped here," he said in a hushed tone. "This town has a way of drawing people in, only to never let them leave." Dread washed over me as I realized the gravity of my situation. I had to escape this town at all costs. I left the diner and continued my aimless journey through the deserted streets, praying for the tow truck to arrive soon. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to overtake me. Just when I thought I couldn't go on, I spotted the headlights of the tow truck in the distance. Relief flooded my veins as the driver pulled up, ready to take me away from this nightmarish town. As we drove away, I glanced back at the motel, its neon sign flickering one final time before fading into the darkness. I couldn't shake the feeling that the town had tried to claim me, to keep me forever in its clutches. But I had escaped, and the open road ahead promised a return to normalcy. And here's the story end. Hope you liked it. Please subscribe to the channel for more horror experiences.